Hello, today we're going to review for our proportions quiz and we're going to use this as a retake. I'm going to complete one and you're going to complete one. So let's get started. If you recall, one of the ways to use a proportion is to use what's called equivalent fractions or scaling. And this particular proportion works well. I can see that 6, if I took 2 times 6, I would get 12. So I could use that method. I could think of whatever number I can think of that 2 times that number would be 4, or I could use division by 2 to go backwards. That's one way to do this. But we're trying to work on the cross multiplication method. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. So I'd like you to cross multiply. You're going to notice that the A comes first, but in math, we like to put the number first. So this means 2 times A. Then our butterfly body, since we're using that method, means to drop down the equal. And then the other butterfly wing means that I'm supposed to take 6 times 4 or 4 times 6, whichever you prefer. So the products on both sides, this is going to stay 2A, and this is going to become 24. So those are the products, the cross products. Now we're not finished because we have one more step, and this is where we solve to find out what A is. So I'm going to divide by whatever number is next to A. In this case, it's 12. And now I have A equals 2. And by the way, I'm going to strongly encourage you to use your calculator on this. I would also encourage you to do this on a separate sheet of paper. This is not in your packet, and it would be very helpful to do this on paper. Would you please solve this proportion and then choose the best answer? If you chose 112, that's a very common error. 112 is one of the cross products. So we have a final step. Our goal is to figure out what Q is. So we have to solve by dividing by 8. And the final answer should be Q equals 14. So now let's move to the next proportion. Once again, we start by cross multiplying. So I'm going to cross, and it actually doesn't matter which wing I use. I could use either one. For instance, if I decided I wanted to put 30 and 12 on this side, that would be fine. And then z times 24 or 24z on this side, that would also be fine. So now I'm going to take 30 times 12 on my calculator. And the product, meaning the answer, is 360, the answer to my cross multiplying. But that's not the final answer. I still have one more step. I need to solve because my ultimate goal is to figure out what z is. So I have to start on the side where the variable is, and next to z is 24. When numbers and variables are side by side, that means they're multiplying. So I have to do the opposite. I have to divide by 24 on both sides. And the answer is 15 equals z, or if you had z on the left side, z equals 15. So now I'd like you to try solving the next proportion. Please choose the answer you think is best. Once again, a very common error is to think that 72 is the answer. That is one of the cross products, but we still have to divide by 3 because we want to know what A equals, and A equals 24. Let's look at the next set of proportions now. You're going to notice that this is different. The last 4 we've done all have variables in them, meaning alphabet letters. And this proportion is comprised of all numbers. So we're going to try to answer this question. Are these two ratios, this is a ratio and this is a ratio, do they form a proportion? If they do, then they're equivalent to each other, like equivalent fractions. And if we don't get the same cross products, then that means that they're not they do not form a proportion. They could just be two ratios, but they're not proportional. So let's see what this looks like. We're going to use our cross multiplication again because that's what we're focusing on. I'm going to take 2 5/10 times 12. And then I'm going to drop down the equal. And I'm going to do the other butterfly wing. And that's 2 times 15, or 15 times 2. So if you want to pause and use your calculator, you can. So the product of 2 5/10 times 12 would be 30. And the product of 2 times 15 would also be 30. So yes, because these are both the same, these ratios form a proportion. So let's try one more together, and I'll have you try the next two on your own. Once again, we're given all numbers. There's no variable, but we can still use our cross multiplication to figure out whether this ratio and this ratio are indeed equal, if they form a proportion. We can see that the numbers look different, but if they would reduce, if this number would reduce to 2/5 or 2/5, we could multiply and create an equivalent fraction or ratio that looked like this. That would be one way to go. Or since once again we're focusing in our cross multiplication, we're going to use that method. So it doesn't matter what wing I start with. I'm going to use 12 times 5. And let's see, I should put a question mark. Does this equal 36 times 2? These numbers are called factors. We've got them from cross multiplying. And now when I use these factors and multiply them, I'm going to get what's called a cross product. 12 times 5 would be 60, and 36 times 2 would be 72. And we can see that they're not equal. And what that ultimately tells us is no, these ratios do not, or don't, if you don't mind me using that, form a proportion. We can tell because their cross products are not equal to each other. All right, so I'd like you to try the next two on your own. Please write down these two ratios on a piece of paper. 14 is to 9. Is that the same as 6 is to 4? So would you write that? And then choose the best answer for this question. Do these two ratios form a proportion? Please tell why by showing your cross products. So is this true? Does 56 equal 54? Well, no, that's not true. And if they are not equal, then this is not a proportion. Or in other words, these two ratios do not form a proportion. Let's go on to the next. Please write down this ratio, 1 over 2 and 2/10 equals 5 over 11. Please use the cross multiplication method to decide whether these two ratios are proportional or not proportional. Does 11 equal 11? Yes. And so this means that these two are proportional. Yes, these ratios form a proportion. Thank you for watching, and thank you for completing this. The more we work on this and practice this, the better we get. Thank you.